Salvete omnes, and welcome to this video on the present system of verbs. So we've talked a lot and only about the present tense, and it's time to move on and cover some other tenses. And when we think about the past tense, we could think of it as in the top sentence here, I went to Sicily, or in the bottom sentence, I was going to Sicily. They are both past tense sentences. However, we're only going to be focusing on this type. This is called the imperfect tense, and it represents an incomplete or a past repeated action. So when we say I was doing something, we're talking about something that in English grammar we call the past progressive tense or the past continuous tense. This is something that was not finished. Maybe it was interrupted. Maybe it's just something in which the speaker is talking about what they were doing at a specific time. At 5 o'clock yesterday, I was eating. When you called me last night, I was sleeping. This is the imperfect tense. The imperfect tense in Latin also includes these sentences. I used to go to Sicily, and I would go to Sicily. Like when I was young in the summers, I would go to Sicily. These are, in English, these are called the habitual past, talking about something that we used to do on a regular basis in the past. Okay, so any of these sentence types here are covered by the imperfect. What is not included here is I went to Sicily. That is a single past completed action. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so here is our imperfect tense. Now also, since we're doing the imperfect tense, we'll also add the future tense. This one's a little bit easier to understand. I will go to Sicily. This is called the simple future tense. And this is I will be going to Sicily. Also a future tense sentence. This is called the future progressive or the future continuous tense when we talk about English grammar. And when we have these three tenses, the present, the imperfect, and the future, we make up something called the present system of verbs. So we look at our four principal parts. We're not looking at the third and fourth right now. We're leaving those lines blank. And to build our present tense, we just do what we've been doing since the beginning of the year. We'll use amo, I love, or I am loving, or I do love. Amo, amas, amat, amamus, amatis, amant. Look at those red letters. Those endings are going to come back in a moment. And we can see the ama in the bottom five. Okay, so for you, he, she, it, we, you all, and they. And that comes from the second principal part, that 2pp drop our e that we are always talking about, right? So we cut that, and then we bring that ama over to there. No problems there. Now for the imperfect tense, we're going to bring that 2pp down for all 6 persons, and we're going to add ba. And look at those red letters. They're there again. Okay, the M is new. There's our ama. Okay, and we'll translate amabam as I was loving or I used to love. Amabas is you were loving, you used to love. Amabat, he was loving, she was loving, and so on. So it's very, very similar to the present tense. We just have that BA. And we call that our tense sign. That BA tells us that we're dealing with the imperfect tense. And I like to use BA as a way to remind me that I'm looking back at the past. Okay? And look at the red letters. There they are. Those endings are almost exactly the same. The future tense is also going to be built from the second principal part. We have ama 6 times, and the blue ones here are a little bit different. Okay, so amabo is I will love or I will be loving. You can see the red letters are the same again. Okay, we have our amas, I will love, I will be loving. Amabis, you love, you will love, you will be loving. Amabet, he, she, or it loves, he, she, or it will be loving, and so on. And our tense sign this time is the BI. The BI tells us that we're dealing with the future. We just have to remember that the first person singular, amabo, is I will love, there's no I. And the third person plural, amabunt, they will love or they will be loving. Those two in blue don't have the tense sign that we would expect. And here's what our present system of verbs looks like. Notice that the 1PP, the first principal part, is only used for the first person singular in the present tense. I love, I am loving, I do love. So it's really important to get these patterns down to memory because we can use these over and over and over again. Once we know the principal parts, we can build the present tense. We can build the imperfect tense. And we can build the future tense. And these three all together are the present system of verbs, which is kind of confusing because inside of the present system of verbs, we have 3 tenses, one of which is called the present tense. So there are 2 systems of verbs. Each system has 3 tenses, and we've just learned one system, the present system, and we've learned the 3 tenses in that system. What's coming up next is what's there on the right, the perfect system. And the perfect system is something that some of you have already heard of. It is remembered by the next 3 tenses that we'll be learning, the perfect tense, the pluperfect tense, the future perfect tense, also known as the perpluperfooper. Don't worry about that now. We'll get to it soon. Now, the only other thing I wanted to say here is when we talk about sum and esse, we run into a bit of a problem because these don't follow. This verb doesn't follow the rules. We can't use the 2PP here the way we did with all the other verbs, amo and pugno, navigo, specto, and so on. So to make the imperfect tense, we have to keep the E from the 2PP, but the rest of this goes. And we add ram. Eram is I was. Eras, you were. Erat, he, she, or it was. Eramus, eratus, and so on. The endings are still the ones that we've been using. Okay? And then when we go over to the future, ero, and then instead of a bi, we have an I as our tense sign. Eris is you will be, erit is he, she, or it will be, erimos is we will be, eritus, and erunt, they will be. So all of the verbs except for sum will follow the pattern that we established before. Sum marches to its own drum. And that's all there is to say for now on verbs. I hope you found this video useful. Walete!